Welcome everybody, it's a pleasure to be here. Today I'm going to talk about Ocean Protocol, and it's about building a new data economy that gives power to people. There's going to be three parts to it. Ocean, what is it to start with? It's building a new data economy that gives power to the people. And the three parts are going to essentially talk about data and the US Supreme Court. We're going to talk about blockchain technology, and then we're going to talk about the potentially explosive way of capital formation that's now being done, which is possibly illegal. So with that, let's start with the first slide. So the first question, or the first topic, is data. Valuable, your phone or the data inside the phone. And in every audience that I speak to, almost no hands go up for the price of the phone, even though it's $1,000. Everybody intuitively knows that the data inside the phone is the most valuable thing there is. And to highlight what this means, I'm going to share a story. And it's about the US Supreme Court. In 2 weeks, there is a case that will be argued, which is Carpenter versus the United States. Little Tim Carpenter is arguing for his privacy rights to the US Supreme Court. And it starts out in Detroit in 2010, December. And in December 2010, on Jefferson Road in Detroit, there was a holdup. There were four guys. They came in there and they asked for the people working at Radio Shack to fill up their bags with phones, iPhones that had newly come out, iPhone 4s. And they got enough phones, and it was about $20,000 worth of phones. And then what they did is they repeated this. A couple months later, they went to 7 Mile Road and they held up a T-Mobile store and got another $20,000 worth of phones. A few months later, they went to Ohio, Warren, Ohio, and they did that to another Radio Shack. And finally, they went to another part of Detroit to do the final one. And so the police, they didn't really know what to do. They didn't have any clues until they made a stop of somebody. And it happened that that person was suspicious on multiple counts. And so as they asked them questions, they realized, this could have something to do with all the robberies that have been happening at the T-Mobiles and Radio Shacks. And so the person that they got gave up information. He said, you know what? If you really want to know who was the mastermind behind all this, you should talk to little Tim Carpenter. And so they tracked down little Tim Carpenter. They realized that they had nothing to convict or to charge little Tim Carpenter on. And so they thought about it. They say, you know, what happens if we go to the court and we ask for the cell phone records of little Tim Carpenter? And so they got it. They went there and they went to the phone company and they got all the phone records, the geolocation of little Tim Carpenter over the last year. And what it showed was that for all four robberies, little Tim Carpenter was somewhere close by. And based on that information, along with other information, they convicted Tim Carpenter to 116 years in prison. And the core question here, so little Tim, he's in prison. He's not getting out for quite a while. But the ACLU came up and said, you used, as police, you used his personal information on his phone to convict him. And this is something that shouldn't be done lightly. And so this is where it comes back to the US Supreme Court, in that the ACLU is sponsoring a case to the Supreme Court to argue whether or not the personal data on our phones is something that the government can use for various purposes. And so if you're a little Tim Carpenter, if I ask you what's more valuable, the phone or the data on your phone, you're probably going to say it's the data, because that was enough to convict him and send him off to jail for 116 years. And so with that story, it leads us to data and where that follows you. And today, data follows you into the home. And it's not just your Nest or your Wi-Fi router, but nowadays it's your fridge, a fridge that can track what you've been eating, what you've been putting in there. And it can also order groceries. That data stream could, in the future, help to convict you of a crime. LinkedIn had a service called InMaps several years ago. They took it down, but it was a really interesting tool because it showed you the connections between people. And you see on the screen here the various colors. There's about 3 major colors: red, green, and blue. And those are the connections which are very tight. They're connected to each other, and they're all connected to you. And so you can see from those colors that each of those groups make up their own kind of category. So you can imagine one of those groups is high school, another one could be university, and the other one could be work. And this is data that not only LinkedIn uses, but every other company uses to map relationships, to create products out of, and to sell potentially your data, which you have no control over. When you leave home and you go for shopping, there are a ton of tools used to do heat maps in terms of how you buy things, how you browse, what catches your eye. And these tools are made available to stores and services to understand consumer behavior. So when you're at home, when you're online, when you go outside, all this data is going to be captured about you. And then finally, even in the process of manufacturing our goods, there's a lot of data that's being collected from the performance of the machines, the efficiency of the manufacturing process, the logistics, the transport, what happens to everything. And all that data is stored to be used. The interesting thing is, though, of all the data that's being created right now, less than 1% of that data is going to be analyzed with today's technology. Even though it's 1%, though, we have a $200 billion data analytics industry that is thriving on top of this. But one of the problems with that is that much of that data, as you kind of can imagine, is stored centrally. It's stored in centralized servers that a single company owns, and their job is A, to sell you services, or B, if they can't sell you services, what they'll do is they will sell your data. And when they sell your data, it's a huge honeypot for hackers to come at you, to come at the companies, and to try access that data. Case in point, Equifax. Pretty much every single American in the world, or every single American now has their private data that's been exposed through no fault of their own and through no control of their own. They didn't ask Equifax to collect their entire consumer history, but Equifax did. And because Equifax had security gaps, every single American has now been exposed with their data. And this is a problem because this is actually our data. Another problem is that, now that I've established that data drives value and that there's a lot of data that's very valuable, it's also clear that there are 5 companies out there that are very good at collecting your data. This is Apple, Amazon, Google, Facebook, and Microsoft. And these companies are special, not only because they have a lot of your data, but because they have the skill set to unlock that data. They have the artificial intelligence, the machine learning capabilities within there to develop new products, to get new insights, to modify or adjust or persuade you to do different things. Case in point, the US election that occurred, where different types of algorithms were able to sway different groups of people for the election. Amazon, they regularly have different pricing techniques for different types of consumers to see what type of insight that they can get. And Google, for instance, it's been shown that ads for people who own iPhones have higher prices than for people who have Android phones. And so this allows these large companies, the fact that they have all this data, to give different services, different pricing, and also have different power that takes power away from people. And this is very dangerous. So on the other side, so we now have like data that's being generated. We have companies in the middle that can use data. We also have companies on the other side who don't have data, but they are very smart. From university programs to startups in Silicon Valley, all around the world, AI starves for data. They want data. They want to consume data. But right now, it's really hard to get it because many companies, many groups are scared to share data because they lose control. There's no way to price it. There's no transparency, and there's no way to protect privacy and stay compliant. So there is a group that could use data if it could be made available. And so what we painted is a picture where data is being collected by many, many companies around the world. We have many companies that are trying to use the data but can't access it. And in the middle, we have a few companies that are able to both create and collect data and to be able to turn it into something valuable. But believe me, we're leaving a lot of value on the ground. And it's an unequal outcome because there should be more data available for everybody and not just the few. And that's what Ocean Protocol is doing. So this is a chart that just says, with more data, 1,000 times more data means 1,000 times less error, which means more accurate self-driving cars, better prediction, cures for diseases. And so how do we bring AI and data together? We essentially need to build a new data economy that optimizes for making data universally available. How? That's what Ocean Protocol is trying to solve. It's trying to combine the data haves with the data have-nots. It's trying to allow for an ecosystem to be built around data sharing. And it's trying to give individuals more power to control their data, to have agency over their data, to have security, to be able to sell their data the way that they want. And it's built on blockchain technology. And so, one of the first and most famous blockchain technologies is Bitcoin. And that is this whole ethos of own your own stuff, send money anywhere in seconds, be your own bank. And around the Bitcoin protocol, there are financial services, there's wallets, there's mining, exchanges, payments, and infrastructure, as well as data, big data, and a couple of other use cases that have built around it. We've had almost 1,000 Bitcoin-related companies start up, collecting over $1 billion in funds to make this happen. And it's a thriving ecosystem. Even with the Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin debate right now, and all these things, the 2x, the SegWit, all this sort of stuff, it is still a very thriving ecosystem. It's a messy ecosystem, but it's a thriving, valuable ecosystem. The next major ecosystem that's been formed around an idea is a world computer, Ethereum. The vision of Vitalik Buterin, implemented by the core team, including Gavin Wood, was to build unstoppable computer code, which allowed decentralized applications and a broader set of use cases. And so if Bitcoin optimized for the security of the network with the mining proof of work, Ethereum is optimizing for allowing for a flowering of different types of applications that require Turing completeness in an open network. And so the Ethereum ecosystem is exploding right now with different types of use cases, from music to health to supply chain, investment, etc., identity, prediction markets. It's a thriving ecosystem that is now worth in the range of, I think, 35 billion. And the killer use case of Ethereum currently is permissionless capital formation, to set up new companies, to undertake a new project and take in money from all over the world, ICOs. How does Ocean want to do this? So, if you think about it, the way that we've been thinking about it from BigchainDB in the last 4 years is that you started with a payments and settlement layer. That was Bitcoin. You go into a world computer, and that's all the components required to build a computer. What's one of the other key components that's been missing? And for us, it was data. With Ascribe, one of our first products with BigchainDB, where on the net, we've had multiple projects that all centered around building a new data economy, giving people power in the new data economy. And Ocean Protocol is an extension of that vision, where if people are producing data, they can tie into Ocean Protocol and have it published. If people are consuming data, they can discover it, they can access it, and they can buy it. There are other mechanisms for guaranteeing delivery of data, curating data, enforcing privacy if the data is personally identifiable or secret information from enterprises. There's a discovery mechanisms, and then there's also governance mechanisms that we're building onto. So Ocean acts essentially as a backbone for existing legacy ecosystems to touch in with Ocean Protocol, and the emerging blockchain stacks that are creating new data and storing it in blockchains today. That's essentially the vision of Ocean Protocol. And so the three pieces that we think are fundamental are the blockchain, the protocol, and the token launch. In Ocean Protocol, we treat data as an asset and as intellectual property. We took components from Ascribe to treat intellectual property on the blockchain, and we're putting that into Ocean. We also, through BigchainDB, built secure mechanisms for control, security, and transparency of locking in your assets, in this case data, using the technology from BigchainDB. Stuff like interledger protocol that we built in, like crypto conditions. We built in role-based access permission, role-based access control, and permissioning tools that we're going to implement within the Ocean Protocol. We're going to need the protocol itself. So that is a proof of space, proof of time, proof of structure, and proof of query. So this is all the proofs that are necessary to optimize for maximizing data on the network, as well as a framework for data to be served and consumed, which includes curation markets, staking, and a couple other things that are now being developed as we speak. And finally, the token launch, which incentivizes all participants to submit data, to secure the network, to consume data, to curate data. It's the internal currency that allows data providers, marketplaces, developers, consumers, and curators to align towards making data freely available and unlocking it from enterprises, unlocking it from the existing silos that we have, and making it available for everybody, while giving people the power to control their own data. And so just to give a little bit of a background, and many of you will probably already know this, you know, the evolution of decentralized tech has gone in kind of 4 phases. We actually started in the 90s with DigiCash. It was this Netherlands startup that had digital cash on centralized servers. And what happened was the regulatory authorities in the Netherlands said, hey, this is illegal. So therefore, if you sell to banks, this DigiCash, you can stay legal. So DigiCash accepted that deal, and then the banks proceeded to not buy DigiCash. It was one of the first ideas where you could have kind of a peer-to-peer cash system, except it was on centralized servers. With cryptographic advancements in cryptography, advances in database technology, 2009 was Bitcoin. It's the unstoppable gold in a peer-to-peer network. Own your assets directly, send anywhere, send money anywhere within minutes, and that's essentially locked us into this path that we're currently on. And that was control your assets. And then in 2013, we had this big kind of altcoin craze that, you know, saw a couple hundred altcoins be founded, stuff like Dogecoin and other ones, which is issue your own currency without central banks. So any one of us, you, me, could issue our own currency. So I could call it Bruce Coin if somebody would want to buy it. And, you know, Doge reached somewhere in the range of 300 million. And so these are the kind of 2 paradigms. Number one is, first, Bitcoin was own your own assets. Altcoins was issue your own currency. Now, with Ethereum as kind of a starting point, it's built an ecosystem with aligned incentives centered around a big vision. It's built a complete new economic ecosystem that optimizes for a specific purpose. With Bitcoin, it was security. With Ethereum, it's cloud computing or decentralized cloud computing. With token launches and with Ocean Protocol, it is centered around making data available and giving people agency over what they produce, not just companies owning it. And token launches are going to fundamentally change how companies raise money. A traditional startup goes through at least 4 funding rounds, maybe even 6 or 7 before they get to an IPO. You know, when we started our company, we modeled our the way we wanted to do it to MongoDB. MongoDB went live, I think, this month on NASDAQ. Congratulations. It was a 9-year process, and they raised up to, I think, a Series D or E. What token launches do is it changes that. It makes it so that something like a blockchain startup could do a seed straight to an ICO, or even before a seed if they have enough capital, and they compel enough of the community globally to contribute money and such like that. It's disrupting venture capital. It's a fundamentally new way to have capital formation. And it's very exciting because that is what Ocean Protocol is going to use to seed the network with tokens, to collect enough funds to build out the protocol, as well as to activate the stakeholders who are going to need Ocean Token to share data, to produce data, to stake data, etc. And one of the things that as we're building this, we're finding is that the new data economy has to imbue itself with the characteristics of decentralization. And a lot of it is counterintuitive. So one of the objectives of us building Ocean Protocol is to cede control, to give up control and make control decentralized over time. We want to develop a roadmap that allows for self-directed teams to take different components of the protocol or different modules to build out of the ecosystem and take the value from that as quickly as possible. And we want to have anybody to be able to join and contribute to the protocol from day one. And so what we're doing is we're working to make it so that all of our progress is transparent to the community, that we have a GitHub repository that others can add to once we roadmap it, and that when we launch the protocol, there is enough value for everybody to be incentivized, whether it's going to be keeper fees or minting rewards, whether it's the ability to buy tokens on the exchange or to earn tokens by producing data, to stake data, to curate data. And that goes against much of the way that we see in Valley and around the world now. Most companies now are centralized, they're hierarchical, and if anything has shown us from Bitcoin and Ethereum and some of the emerging technologies like 0x, is that you don't need centralized structures. You need a community that imbues its wisdom into the whole protocol. But you do need a high-level view that everybody can agree on. What's informed us a lot is the book Anti-Fragile, where along all of the protocol, whether it's at the minting rewards, the exchanges, the on-ramps, the developers, the foundation, you can't have a single point of failure, because single points of failure cause problems. Case in point, the Parity team have done a heroic job to try to make, find a solution for the wallet hack, or not. It wasn't a hack, but it was a mistake. It was essentially a centralized library component. That was a centralized point of failure. And so, the learnings from that is that Ethereum will be a stronger ecosystem. Parity will be smarter as a whole, and the learnings will be shared amongst all of us so that we never have centralized library components again for something so fundamental to what we're building. And we need to design the data economy to unlock data universally. And that means that we go to the hackers to develop the disruptive business models. We go to nonprofits and NGOs who have data and it's lying around. They're looking for ways to unlock it. We go to corporations. As unpalatable it is to many of the people in the community, we do need to go to corporations to unlock their data because they have a lot of it. And the way I see it is that Ethereum, they started out with a very, very strong community. But only now is the are corporates coming in, and that's a good and a bad thing. But imagine if you could have had corporates on board 2 years ago to consider putting their computing and business logic into an Ethereum network earlier. The network would be that much stronger. And so for Ocean, we see that there are kind of two major tracks. Number one, and fundamentally the most important, is the community. How can we get developers involved? How can we get the crypto fans involved? But at the same time, how do we get it so that companies are comfortable to share data? How do we get it so that governments are comfortable to allow companies to share data? And for that, we're working with a few governments that we're making announcements for in the next couple of weeks. And the final thing is ultra transparency and openness to the community, to all stakeholders. This is something that we're taking to heart with Ocean. We're getting our ducks in a row, and we're gonna share as much information as possible and answer as many questions. So with that, I'm just gonna stop there and say, if you wanna learn more, go to oceanprotocol.com, and we're happy to have questions. So I have a question. So how does Ocean Protocol and Ethereum work together? Ideally, there are on-ramps to Ocean Protocol between Ethereum. So they definitely do not compete. So Ethereum is the world computer. So it's computing components that Ocean can use. So one of the things that a specific example is, many companies will never unlock their data in the sense of allowing somebody else to take it from their servers. The way that we can use this is we can use different components that Ethereum projects are working on, which could be on-premise computing or zero knowledge proofs, stuff like that. You can have it so that a company says, my data is available and I will provide the processing power for it if you pay me. But your algorithm can only come into my on-premise, into my staging area. You can run your algorithm can leave with a result set, and that's the only condition that I will allow you to use the data. And so there are different components that we're seeing right now that are being built both in the Ethereum community and elsewhere that will allow this to happen. So it's essentially secure multi-party compute, it's with Docker containers, it's with other technologies that allow a company to unlock their data without exposing their data. So an AI company could come in, run their algorithm, they never see the data, they never actually see each individual component, but their AI algorithm leaves with a result set and it's better trained already. And that's kind of how we see Ocean Protocol being able to support with this. This is one of the things that is 1 year in our roadmap. At the initial stage, what we want to do is stand up a basic backbone that has the proofs of space and time, the proofs of query, the proof of structure of the data, so that others can, the Ocean Protocol starts as essentially kind of a mechanism that allows you to prove verifiably that the data has been available, that it's been served up, and that it has the right structure for somebody to use. Do we use homomorphic encryption or zero knowledge? Those are components that we are keeping a very close eye on. One of the things that we want to make sure of is, so our job is to make sure Ocean Protocol gets stood up as a network. So once the network is stood up, then it can go in multiple directions. It's not going to be our job to set up homomorphic encryption or zero knowledge as a means for people to access data or to transmit value. What we want to do is put that into a roadmap that any developer around the world can take and build on. And one of the roles of the foundation is to have enough resources as well as tokens, so cash and tokens, to bounty this stuff out. So our goal is to have a map of all the things that we think could be useful for Ocean, along with specifications, and even the specifications itself could be bountied out. So what we see is stand up the network, have a roadmap, and then once the network is up, or even beforehand, we have, okay, we need to specify these 100 components that will make it easy for, let's say, Ethereum to integrate, or Ethereum community to integrate with us, to the IOTA community, Interledger community, etc. Let's specify that out. We will give bounties for the specification, and whoever fulfills that specification of a specification, you get the bounty of tokens and or cash. And then there's the actual building of that project. So that's another set of bounties. Or it could be even funding teams that want to be open source, but right now have a choice between selling out, selling out's the wrong word, but giving equity to VCs or selling out to a large organization, or open sourcing their stuff for the community and towards Ocean Protocol. And so we're looking at those means once we have a foundation to bounty out things with tokens, with cash, or even to provide grants to startups who are building these key components that we're going to need. What's our take on SingularityNet? Help me out. Is this SingularityNet? Is this the AI group that is led by, I think it's Andreas Müller? I could be wrong by that. Anyway, SingularityNet. Is that a blockchain startup? Sorry, so there's someone else who's, oh, Ben Goertzel, awesome. Yeah, Ben Goertzel. So I just spoke to him a couple weeks ago. SingularityNet, we see as a partner to Ocean Protocol. One of the things in general is that there's about 6 or 7 communities that deal with AI, and they have thriving communities. So some of them have like 1,000 people, other ones have 10,000 people, like scikit-learn, and others. We see that our job is to make it so Ocean Protocol serves them, because they are the supply side. If we have 20,000 raving, hungry AI researchers, data scientists on one side, and on the other side, we have the data, either from NGOs, the free public data that we can curate before the network launches, as well as from large corporations, then that's a marketplace that's going to be very active from day one. So right now, we're talking to a lot of companies, and they're asking, if we make our data available, will anybody consume it? And we said, hell yeah. We are talking with these organizations right now. So we're talking with many of these organizations, and our goal is to have something like 20,000 data scientists. I don't know if we'll reach it, but that's our goal. 20,000 data scientists who are knowledgeable or just aware of Ocean Protocol, and on day one, they come in and they say, all right, here's a smorgasbord, what kind of data is going to be available? And the companies on the other side saying, okay, here's the data that I'm going to make available. I hope somebody shows up to buy it under the conditions that we give. So that's on network launch what we're trying to have. Not only have the protocol set up so that we have the proper proofs and the incentive mechanism, but also the supply and the demand both at the same time. And then there's other things like the curation markets for people to refer data and have lists of data. So for instance, let's say pharmaceutical and health data or human data, all these kind of things nascently starting up. And we just need to build the components to allow people to do that. One of the comments is the biggest value is to create an ecosystem at the intersection of Ocean Protocol and Ethereum. We see that. We see that actually it's an intersection between Ocean Protocol and Ethereum, and potentially Filecoin, right, with data storage, and in a sense Bitcoin, but not to a big extent right now, just because unless Bitcoin Cash allows for low price transactions, Bitcoin is not really going to be suitable for Ocean Protocol for most use cases unless you're buying big data sets. IOTA is actually a great use because IOTA is all about IoT. And so the way that we've seen it is that there's personal data, there's corporate data, which a lot of it is personal, but there is a lot of corporate data. So let's just say, consumer information, retail information, everything to do with cars, cities, stuff like that. And then there's a third component, which is machines. And for us, IOTA is based in Berlin like we are. We've been in conversation with Dominic and the team there. We see that an integration with IOTA is fundamental to unlock the machine economy. And with BigchainDB, we built the first connector to IOTA. And so that's one of the components we hope to reuse in Ocean Protocol so that we can hook in IOTA immediately on day one. There's a comment that we shouldn't limit to data sources. I guess my question would be, what do you mean by that? Is that intellectual property as well? Music, all this kind of stuff? What do you mean, Dimitri? Yes, the value, whatever. Yes, so one of the interesting things is, and this is kind of like the learnings. I mean, when I talk to VCs, they say, like one of the impressions you could have is that we have no focus as a company. We started out with a scribe, which is intellectual property. Okay, data is the value, whatever generates it. Yes, I was reacting to adding IoT machines. Yes, yeah, that's an interesting thing. So what you could actually do is you could have the machines themselves interacting directly with Ocean Protocol. We see that as a little bit farther out, but it definitely is possible so that you can have DAOs. This is something that my co-founder Trent has talked a lot about. Really interesting concept. It's still a little bit early, but Ocean allows for DAOs to sell their data directly to the community, to machines, to humans, and nobody needs to know that you are an IoT device. Just like, you know, in 1996, there was a joke, nobody needs to know that you're a dog on the internet. With Ocean Protocol, it's another component that allows for value transfer between humans, machines, and organizations. There's another link that was Data Broker DAO. That is from the guys in Belgium. We're friends with them as well. We see that they are potentially a marketplace that works, that can work with Ocean Protocol. So we have a list of about 6 or 7 marketplaces from Enigma. I'm surprised nobody has asked about Enigma recently. Enigma is all about trading data, financial data. We think that Enigma is a great use case because if they're focused on financial data, a lot of that data is also useful for other things. So maybe the UN is interested in their data for other purposes. You have something like Datum that just closed, I think, their token launch recently. That's personal data, but they're also looking at structured data. You have Data Broker DAO, IOTA Marketplace. Our partner is Dex. They were trying to do corporate data, but they found that nobody was willing to share their data with a third-party intermediary. In comes blockchain, and there's your solution. So there are many applications that are complementary to Ocean Protocol. So one thing that people ask a lot is Ocean Protocol a marketplace? The answer is no. Ocean Protocol is the marketplace location that people come to, and then they set up their own marketplace, right? So it's just like a farmer's market. It's at this location. That's what Ocean Protocol is. And then someone like Enigma, Datum, IOTA, Data Broker DAO, they all come in there to sell their wares, their data, and they find others who they can work with. They make connections and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, Ocean Protocol is meant to be a protocol with a foundation for governance. We activate the ecosystem, and then we melt away. One thing I do want to get out is all the money that we're going to raise in the token launch goes towards building the platform, the ecosystem. The way that BigchainDB and Dex, the way that we're going to have our carry is on the tokens. That's a covenant and is promised to the community, to all of you, that whoever contributes to the public launch or the pre-launch, in that the money will be spent transparently as if it was our own. And we really do believe that this is something we need to build in order for us to build other components for a decentralized world that gives power to people. That's really important to us. With that, I'm at 40 minutes. I'm wondering if Alex is going to take me off now. I heard multi-sig wallets. Once again, that's another component that's probably going to need to be there to help manage the ocean, I'm guessing. Yes. So we're going to have a multi-sig wallet for Ocean Protocol. Right now, it's going to be Dex and ourselves. We're collecting feedback in terms of how to manage the funds in that way. Yeah. Cool. I think that's 11 minutes. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate the fact that you guys listened. I've never done one of these before. Yeah, District X, 0x. We love what the 0x guys have done, District X. That whole community is a model for how we're going to do this. We've talked with Will and the team there, and they've been extremely supportive of us. So yeah, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, bruce@oceanprotocol.com. Yeah, great. There's another question. I don't know if it's still recording, but anyways, where does the name Ocean Protocol come from? It comes from the idea that we have data lakes, data streams, data flows, and all that data needs to flow to one place. It always does. It always flows into an ocean, and that's where Ocean Protocol comes from. And so, I mean, you know, the token is going to be called Ocean. We had thought about drops, but that's actually probably going to be the name of the internal currency. So just like Ether has gas, we're probably going to have ocean tokens with drops for each data set. We'll have, anyways, I'll explain. It'll come out in a technical white paper, but there's essentially a two-level currency. Yeah, don't try to boil the ocean. That's also very good. So don't try. And one thing somebody else made as a joke is like, ocean's bigger than Amazon. So that was a funny thing. We hadn't thought about that, but one question actually is really good. Why do you need a token? This is actually fundamental to the network. So there's a lot of shit coins out there. There's a lot of scams out there. We try to hold ourselves to a high level of integrity and to do what makes sense. So we've already been building, like Trent and the people who've helped us, I won't do name dropping, but they're all the names that you've heard of in the blockchain space. We're not going to name them, I think, just because we want to respect, like they are advisors, but I don't want to be doing name dropping. I think I already did one or two, so I apologize for that. But we've done token designs. Trent's helped to do about 8 of them. I was just with yesterday somebody who did 10 of them. The fundamental thing about a token design is that it has to be part of a business, a technological and governance system that is inseparable. You cannot separate the token from the protocol, from the incentive model. And with Ocean, why do you need a token? Number one is the block reward gives the keepers, the people who are securing the network, tokens to do that, to validate transactions, but also part of the block reward goes to people who serve up data. So it's not optimized like Bitcoin is for securing the network. What it is, it's optimized for generating data or collecting data. So imagine if you dump a whole bunch of data onto the network and then within minutes, somebody starts consuming it. Well, you get part of the block reward, yeah? That is a fundamental component of the protocol. Secondly is, as you buy data, you need to buy it in Ocean. Whether or not you convert it into fiat, euro, dollar, or Sing dollars, or what have you, it's you still price the data in Ocean, yeah. And so it's not like it's 5 Ocean only. And if there's volatility on Ocean, you can say it's $5 in Ocean and convert it immediately. So there's a third component, which is really important that most systems have not had, but they're just coming up now. Like, so for instance, Simple Token and a couple of the other ones, it's a staking mechanism. So you actually need Ocean Token to publish data. What this does is it fights off Sybil attacks. So if you produce data that isn't yours, that you stole from somebody else, somebody can challenge you and you can lose your stake. So it could be like 1/10 of the value of the data that you're staking. But it's natural skin in the game that requires Ocean Token. And so this whole economic system is essentially what we're building that incentivizes you by being a part of it. You can sell data and collect Ocean, plus you can use Ocean as a staking mechanism, not only for your own data, but for other people's data. You can actually use it partially as a prediction market on which data is going to be valuable, because you can actually stake your Ocean on somebody else's data. And so that's really neat, novel way to do this, and we're working all that stuff out. That's why we haven't released a white paper, but we did release the technical primer to give you an idea in terms of how this all worked. Yeah. How do you take a margin on the trades? There is no. So one of the fundamental takes on these crypto economic systems, if they are good, is that there is no margin. So right now, if I want to sell data, it costs me a lot of money to do it. I need to find an exchange. I need to sign contracts. It's typically it's a stack of paper that thick before I can even consider selling my data. Ocean Protocol tries to program that in to the protocol, the trust that you need, all the contracts that we currently have today via contracts and legal systems. You try to build it in to the protocol itself. And by doing that, you make it so that the protocol pays for the transactions, because the protocol gives a block reward, a minting reward to the keepers. Meanwhile, me as a data consumer, or you as a data producer, we just transact. You say, I will give it to you for $5 worth 5 Ocean tokens. I agree to that. The transaction goes through, the network handles it. There's zero friction, there's zero take from the network. And that's why we think that Ocean Protocol can be powerful, is because the network reduces the cost of creating data from, let's say $100 to like 1 cent potentially, right? It's a 10,000x or 100,000x cheaper way, just like the internet made it cheaper to send information. Currently, I don't know what a first-class mail is, like it's 50 cents or 70 cents in Germany. You know, that's the cost to send information via snail mail. Internet makes it so that that cost is zero. We try to make this for data the same thing. And the fundamental is that Ocean Protocol doesn't add friction by imposing a transaction fee. But the friction is, you know, how do we build up this ecosystem so that the on-ramps are as smooth as possible so that people can buy and share data, discover it, all this kind of stuff, yeah? We are based in Berlin, Germany, like some of the other ecosystems like Cosmos, IOTA, Ethereum Foundation, Parity, Simple Token, they're all kind of based in Berlin. So it seems like it seems like there's a thriving ecosystem here in Berlin. I'm not in the bathroom, I'm in my kitchen. Why not London? London, unfortunately, London's too focused on financial services, and so all the money for the blockchain space went to fintech-related blockchain startups. It's also very expensive to start up. Berlin is cheap. Cost of living here is probably 1/4 of Berlin. It's for crypto anarchists. It appeals to the greater good of humankind. That's why we actually have, what most people don't know is we have $4 billion ecosystems already. We have the Ethereum Foundation, Parity Labs, we have Cosmos, we have IOTA, and we're gonna have several others in the coming months once the token launches are through. Yeah. Thank you for the invite to Edinburgh, beautiful city. Anybody, any other questions? Do we know Jay from Cosmos? Absolutely. We were talking with Jay for years. Jay, I think, is from Canada. He's from Toronto, so am I. It's funny how many of the people in the blockchain space are from Toronto or from Canada, all the way from the infamous Tapscots to Vitalik to Joe Lubin and the Lilich brothers, myself. There's a whole bunch of people from Toronto. Yeah, this has been fun. It's been an interesting experience. Thank you, Tina, for the comment about the Catherine. How do we get a hold of you? Email. You can write me at bruce@oceanprotocol.com. We are having a pre-launch right now, so if you're interested in that, please get a hold of me ahead of a public launch. We're just figuring out when to do a public launch. Some of the questions we've been solving, we've been working with a lot of lawyers, spending a lot of money on that, is, you know, how do we comply with SEC laws? It turns out that we'll probably need to do kind of a full KYC and restrict investment from the US, unfortunately, to accredited investors. There is a way around that with kind of a refundable voucher like Blockstack team has done. So we're investigating that because we want that anybody who wants to buy Ocean tokens, either in the pre-launch or in the public sale, is able to, because that's just part of our ethos. Yeah. For KYC AML, we have a very good service provider. If any of you guys are thinking of doing a token launch yourself and need to comply with European GDPR laws, I have some names for you. Yeah, so it's not just going to be, you know, the service providers in Switzerland or in America, but there's other providers who are trying to comply with European regulation also, if that's something that's interesting for you guys. Hey, have a great night. Take care. Let me know if you have any other questions. Just write me a note. Yeah, cool. See you later.